listening to What Matters on Radio Castle Dermot with John Phelan. O'Gorman Meats, your local winning butchers, serving the local community for generations and proud to sponsor Radio Castle Dermot.
Okay, you're very welcome back, and I'm delighted to be joined here by Councillor Ivan Keatley, and you're very welcome to Radio Castle Dermot, Ivan.
Thanks a million for having me, John.
Just before I get in with Ivan, Perry here in the centre has asked me to mention about a vacancy that's available up in Season's shop, Castle Dermot Tidy Towns. They're looking for a sales assistant, and that's in on the community employment scheme. So all vacancies are 19.5 hours per week. To qualify for the scheme, you must be receiving the Department of Social Protection qualifying payment for over a year, and you must be over 21 years of age. The basic rate of pay is $247.50 plus your children/adult dependent allowance. So anybody who wants more details on that, you can contact Perry here in the centre. You can get him by phone on 059 91 44 888 or by email castledermotces@gmail.com. And so that's for a sales assistant under the CE scheme up in Season's shop. And the competition question again is what Saints' Day is celebrated tomorrow? And so you can get your answers in by text or WhatsApp over into my number. It's up there on the screen. So Ivan, I asked you to come in here, I suppose today, mainly to talk about grants and what grants are available to, I suppose, community groups, to there's some business grants we're going to talk about, to sports clubs and to people in general. And I suppose there's a number of different grant funding that's available coming from different sources. So we'll go through those as the programme progresses, I suppose.
Yeah, there's a lot there, John, and I think my response to you when you asked me to come on was probably you know as much as about grants and grant application forms and filling out as I do, and a lot more certainly about the detail. You've been involved in that much in the community with regards to the GA and here, of course, in Chock Dearman, and the massive amount of money it got to get this place up and running, I suppose, is a nice place to start. Yeah,
like Kildare Leader Partnership, an absolute godsend to Castle Dermot, I have to say. And like you say, the centre that we're sitting in here, we wouldn't be here without Kildare Leader Partnership. And a great lady that was working with them at the time, Berta Mulvey, absolutely brilliant, and she was a brilliant person to work with. And the funding that we received here from Kildare Leader Partnership was €500,000.
Yeah, and as you said, it was a massive amount of money, but I suppose the big, as you well know, John, that wouldn't have happened absolutely without Kildare Leader Partnership, but it was a fantastic committee here at the time as well. I remember only starting out on Kildare County Council and being confronted with yourself and a number of other local men and women, and it was, you know, when you heard the sums of money involved at that time, and me starting out as a novice, and very much a novice, I was looking at you very much with my mouth open and wondering how in the name of God are we going to find that type of money. But as you said, Kildare Leader Partnership were running the European, I think, Rural Development Fund at that time. And thankfully they stepped in after a huge amount of work by yourselves, I'd have to say, and that wouldn't be easy money to access by any manner or means, even with the help of Kildare Leader Partnership. Yeah. And as I said, you'd be a lot more proficient at the form filling than I certainly would in that regard. But yeah, that fund actually ended in 2020, John, and there were a huge amount of local projects and very worthy projects funded under that scheme, and there's an interim scheme now. There, the funds are not as big, but there's still six-figure sums there available. And it was a nice lead in there, just talking about the CES scheme. I know Kildare Leader Partnership are involved in an awful lot more now even than they were then, in terms of employment schemes, in terms of various grant funding opportunities. And I suppose if we were to stay, we could spend the whole, I suppose, half hour talking about the funding opportunities there. And the only thing you can say to people is the website is there, and it's very easy to access. And I know the phones are always manned over in Kildare Town in the company's office over there as well. They are a subgroup of Kildare County Councillors. A number of councillors sit on the board, as well as I think Still Mearns is vice chair this year, and Kildare Sports Partnership come under their remit now as well. So they've expanded hugely in the last number of years, and they're involved in an awful lot of projects. So certainly great to see. Yeah,
no, definitely. And I suppose for anybody who doesn't know, besides the centre here in Castledermot, from Kildare Leader Partnership, the Astro pitch down in the primary school and the playground are two other facilities that are in Castledermot because of the funding that's available. But like you said, it's not easy money to get, but there's some great people here in Castledermot, and once they put their mind to something and put the shoulder to the wheel, and it is a lot of forms to fill in, a lot of boxes to be ticked, but the money is there to be given away, which is amazing. And it's something that we found amazing when we started down the road of a derelict old primary school here, and that to know that there was 500,000 there that they wanted to give you, and all you had to do was follow the instructions and do what they asked you to do.
Yeah, and I think what helps with it as well is fundraising, as you know. You know, when you're selling your raffle ticket and you can tell someone, look, if we raise 10,000 or 15 or 20,000, we have this other money we can access, because most of those funding opportunities require a match funding from the community or from the council of some sort or shape, and that can come in the guise of expertise and hours that you were putting in yourselves, but it also has to come from fundraising, and it makes that certainly a lot easier. Before we move off it, John, if I could just mention the other initiative that was undertaken by the Kildare Leader Partners is I had it in at the end, but in case we don't get to the end, I said I better mention it now, and that's the Kildare Public Participation Network, set up in conjunction with the community section in Kildare County Council. And I know most of the clubs here locally are registered with them, but if there is a volunteer group or a club out there that is not registered with the PPN, it is certainly worthwhile doing. If you contact Kildare Leader Partnership or contact the community section in the Kildare County Council, they will give you all you need to know, because you'll receive an email every week showing you exactly what funding opportunities are open, what the closing dates are, and what's available out there. And that's probably going to be as much, if not a lot more worthwhile than what we can cover here in the next half an hour.
Yeah, definitely. And it is an easy enough number to actually get. Like, they are very helpful there in getting the number. So yeah, definitely, if there is any groups out there and you haven't registered for that Kildare PPN, I would highly recommend that put it on your to-do list, and put it on your to-do list within the next couple of days, because we are going to be talking about grants that are closing before the end of February. So moving on from Kildare Leader Partnership, the next I suppose grant that we're going to talk about, and one that has also been very beneficial to Castledermot and the surrounding area, is the Sports Capital Grants.
Yeah, and thankfully, as you said, a number of groups locally were beneficiaries of this particular grant, John. And I suppose there are two main grants. There are the big one, the Sports Capital for Infrastructure, and then there is the recent or the more recent funding stream through the Sports Equipment Grant. And I know the Pitch and Push, the GA, and also a number of other local clubs in the whole of IMD have gotten smaller amounts through that particular funding stream as well. But again, you know, yourselves in the GA being able to draw down the likes of 82,000. I know you are busy trying to get that spent at the moment, like we are down in Lawrence's. We've a grant there that has to be spent along with Nerney. a Thai GA are very busy spending their money. It was a 6-figure sum as well, announced only last year. So it's absolutely fantastic to see that work going on, because as you know, and as we all know, we can't have enough ground space, facilities, infrastructure in terms of trying to get kids room for basic facilities.
Yeah.
And I know every club is stretched to the limit in that regard, so it's fantastic to see that opportunity.
It is, and I suppose for anybody who doesn't know, like, you can get funding up to 92% of your project.
Correct. Yeah, and it's fantastic. And I suppose last year, and I know I was talking to Martin Hayden coming down on the road, and I was trying to see could we get a big announcement here as to when we're going to know the thing is going to open up again. But unfortunately, he didn't give me any news. But I suppose one thing we did conclude is that, you know, while there might be clubs out there not looking at an application in front of them, you know, now is as good a time as any to put that preparation in, because as you know, John, you know, you can't do enough preparation. If you go onto the website, have a look at what the level of detail that you need in order to be able to apply. And again, I don't know when that application is going to, I think at the moment, just checking the website there recently, they're trying to survey clubs to see what money is being drawn down and hasn't been drawn down. And to try and be a little bit more directful in the funding that they're going to offer the next time round. Hopefully that'll come later on in the year, in October, November. That's what we're hoping for, as Martin has said. But again, if you're registered with the PPN, you'll get plenty of notice of that. All
right. The great thing about us here on Radio Castledermot, Ivan, is you can be put on the spot. And we always ask our listeners if they have any questions to throw them up. So we have a question here from one of our listeners, and they want to know, in relation to the playground, what's the story on the parking? Is there going to be anything done about the car parking at the playground, or is there a plan in place for parking?
Very, very good question, and John, you're right. You put me on the spot. Yeah, no, it's to be fair to the other 4 councillors in the area and myself, this is something we've been bringing up since the playground opened. Before the playground opened, we were due to do a parking review of Castledermot. So, not to introduce pay parking or anything like that. I'm not going to.
We won't go down that road.
No, I don't want to put the frighteners or anything. But I suppose there are public parking spots all over Castledermot. On the side of the road, in a few on the back roads, etc., etc. So that has to be reviewed. Now, we decided at the time that there's absolutely no point in doing a review of the parking until the playground opened, to see where we were going to, because we knew there was going to be a huge demand, and the situation down there is not good enough. Absolutely, there are people in local properties that are being seriously affected. So we've been promised that review is going to come to us this year. I don't know, I don't have an exact date for it, but when we do that, at least then the public will have the opportunity to have their say, because it's very easy for Ivan Keatley or John Phelan to say where people should and shouldn't be parking, and where the parking needs are. So I don't know the answer to it, and I'm not kicking the can down the road, I promise you. But it absolutely does need to be done. It is recognised. As I said, in the community centre, again, have been very, very good in offering the car park here for any overflow, or if people are prepared to use it. But as you know, John, whether it's a school, whether it's a community centre or a church, people want to park in the door or at the gate.
Exactly,
It can be very hard to satisfy parking anywhere other than that.
Yeah. Okay, Ivan, thanks a million. And I can just say that I will follow up on that, Trish, with our councillors over the next, during the year, and when we get some more information, we will bring it to you here on What Matters on Radio Castledermot. So Ivan, I suppose that was our, like you said, the Sports Capital grant, which, like we say, is for sports clubs, and so we'll move on from that. And the next one, which probably is of more interest to more people, and it's what grants you can get through Kildare County Council.
Yeah.
So I know there's a wide variety. We could probably sit here for 2 hours talking about all the grants and how to go about it, but we'll you might just give us some details on some of the grants that are actually available.
And just before I do that, John, it was remiss of me not to say to you that we are due. People would have put in their opinions on a town renewal plan last year, and just in case people think we've forgotten about it and it's gone somewhere gathering dust, that hasn't been published or brought before the council yet for adoption. There's a couple of planning processes that have to be gone through, but we are promised. I'm not allowed to talk about it because we haven't adopted it at council yet.
No, brother.
But we are expected it not in the next few months, but in the either next month or the month after, and hopefully that will be adopted. And within that, there are a number of projects around the town that hopefully will be highlighted and, I suppose, shovel ready, if you like, or plan ready for grant opportunities. So that's where I'm hoping the parking situation will come into play as well, below on the Fairgreen.
Brilliant. That's great.
Sorry, local government. Yeah, so Kildare County Council community grants. Yeah, I suppose when you asked me at the end of last year when would be the best time to talk about it, I suppose this was the reason. One of the reasons I felt this was as good a time as any, John, because the community grants section at the moment are accepting grants for our community grants, our festival grants and our resident association grants at the moment up until and including the 10th of March. So there's only a few weeks left. The groups, I suppose, that are used to applying will be aware they will have been sent notices. But again, I suppose a good purpose for us here this evening is to highlight the groups that maybe are not aware. So if there's a residents association grant out there in particular, because there are always jobs to be done within housing estates and around housing estates. So private housing estates can get grants up to €1,000 or €1,500, and council housing estates can get anything from €3 up to €1,200 euros as well. And as I said, you can get the applications are available on the Kildare County Council website. Practically all of the grant streams now are gone online, particularly since COVID. There was the option of paper up until last year, and as we discussed beforehand, John, I think your first application is probably going to be the hardest one because it's the one with the most detail on it. But I suppose once you do that the first time, that stays in the system with the council, so it does become easier after that.
Yeah, like the Kildare County Council grants, like you say, they're all gone online, and once you have your first grant in, like the first time, it is a little bit cumbersome. There's a lot of information that you have to put in there, a lot of boxes that you have to tick. But once you get in there and once you have that one done, the rest of them thereafter will be easier. Exactly. But Kildare PPN number that we talked about there a few minutes ago, that is essential for making all grant applications into Kildare County Council.
The other one there, I suppose, that's imminent, John, in terms of a closing date, and I know you're well aware of this one as well. I think you're filling out 3 or 4 of them, as you told me beforehand. But it's the community support fund, I suppose, that people would have heard announced before Christmas for the likes of Chalk Dermot, for other community groups. That is closing on the 24th of February. So, and that's to help, obviously, with the rise in energy costs that community and voluntary groups are having to endure over the last couple, and it is generous. It is being administered through the local community development committee within the council. So very, very important for people to get that application in before next Friday week. I suppose the ones that are not imminent in terms of closing dates, then there are. If you go into every section in the council, John, there are grants available, and I've absolutely no doubt we'll miss some of them here today. But yeah. I've tried to cover some of the bigger ones and some of the ones that I'm most contacted about. And I suppose the biggest section in the council in terms of budget is our housing section, and a few of the grants there that are available is the older persons grant, the disability grant, and the accessibility grants. And the older persons grant, the disability access grant is anything up to 30,000, usually falls in around 8 to 10k, and is available for the conversion of bathrooms, level access showers, that type of thing. The accessibility grant then is up to about 3,000. And I suppose the one thing I'd say about those grant applications, a lot of the time I get people contacting me telling me that somebody is coming home from hospital next week and how quick can I get the grant. And I know it's not always possible to try and foresee what may or may not happen. But if you have any inkling that you're going to need support from any of those funds, the important thing is to get the application in. It's relatively simple. When I say relatively, the application form does look for quotations, etc., but you don't need those straight away. It's important just to get your initial details in so you can be assessed, and you can be, because it is very difficult, as you know, at the moment to try and get contractors to come in, even local ones. They're very, very busy. So that's the important thing with all of those grants. Get them in as quick as you can.
Right. And if somebody wants help filling those out or wants some more information on it, Ivan, I'm sure they can contact you or any of the councillors in the district.
Yeah, we've 5 councillors in the Athy MD, so anyone in Castledermot can contact any of us, or indeed any of the TDs, senators. I know Martin's office will be very busy in Newbridge as well, and we don't mind. I know they're all very helpful and as good as I am at trying to help people out. So, and I suppose the only other thing to say about that is obviously the energy upgrades are covered by the SEAI. Again, John, you could probably cover a whole show talking about those individual grants, but I suppose if you're looking at upgrading your heating system or windows or doors, just check out the SEAI website first, because there are some very, very good grants on that website also, but you won't be funded by both, you'll be funded by one or the other. So just to cover all your options. Yeah.
And I suppose all these grants, if somebody goes on to Kildare County Council's website, there is a lot of information on there about the housing grants and all other grants. Like there's,
Exactly.
it is actually a great website.
Yeah, and even for people that are not familiar or not techno like myself, ring 980-200. You'll get the switch. Just ask for the housing section, the housing grant section, or indeed the roads grant section, heritage grant section, environment grant section, and they'll put you straight through. So even for somebody that can't access the website for whatever reason, it is possible to do that. Or like you said, contact any of the public representatives. They'll be more than happy to help.
That's great, Ivan. And other grants within Kildare County Council then that would, I suppose, appeal to the community grants. I know we spoke a little bit about them, but like the community grants there are really, they're available for any group, any community group, whether it's the residents, whether it's something like the Tidy Towns, whether it's like I know our parent and toddler group here have got some funding, and here in Radio Castledermot as well, we've got funding from Kildare County Council, which we're very thankful for, and I know our grant fund manager and our IT whiz Tomás O'Connell is on the job and always on, so you definitely will be getting there'll be an application going in this year as well from Radio Castledermot.
Yeah, and I suppose, joking aside, it's one thing I do encourage clubs and voluntary groups to do, and it's a lot easier said than done, and that is to appoint a funds manager position on your committee. I mean, it's very it's not easy getting anyone onto a committee, but grant funding is a whole area on its own, John, as you well know, and it's easy to stand up in a committee meeting and say we should apply for this, but it's a whole other ball game going
to actually go and do it.
Downloading the scheme, making yourself qualify, and then drawing it down and qualifying. You're 100% right. I mean, something like some of the national grants that come under sports capital or that come under the social and rural affairs portfolio are very complicated and hard to draw down, but the council grants tend to be that bit easier. Or at least that's what I found over the years. Yeah. We aren't making it any easier. Bureaucracy and GDPR and all the rest of it is throwing its challenges at it. But certainly those smaller amounts are much easier to access. And I suppose the grants that were received here and the small grants, the ones for 1,000 or 2,000.
Yes.
A lot of those grants now are covered under the local property tax, and I suppose it's the one big difference in local government. You did promise you'd stop me now. I'm stay rabbiting on, John.
We're going well.
If it turns into a political broadcast or something, but the local property tax that none of us want to pay, that came in 2014. It's the only tax we pay, I suppose, that stays in the local government, that stays in Kildare County Council, and thankfully we get somewhere in the region in the Athy area of about 800,000 or 900,000 that we, the public reps, actually have control over, because there's a budget there in the council of a couple of 100 million, but the officials get, somewhere about 75 or 80% control over that. So it's staffing, it's fixed expenditure that we don't really, if you want to change the budget, the first thing they'll say to you is, okay, well, what fire brigade are you not funding next year? Or
right,
so they're much harder equations to try and solve. Whereas the local ones, there's that bit more flexibility in them. And as problems come up and where community groups need funding, the local property tax is certainly a good one, and I found that it's certainly brought a little bit of flexibility into how I suppose we can try and fund. And you mentioned the playground there, John. In 2014, we started putting 10 grand a year of LPT aside. I think there was about 50 or 60,000 of local property tax went in, along with the leader funding and some of the capital funding from the council as well. So that just gives you an idea of one area. And one project that was funded through local property tax, and I just find that people are completely oblivious to the fact that any local property tax stays in their area, and that the local representatives have a little bit of control over it, and it certainly makes our job that little bit easier anyway.
Yeah, and like Ivan said there, folks, the money stays in the local area, and the grants that we can get, you don't have to be going applying for a grant for 10,000, 20,000, 30,000. There's grants out there for small amounts. Like there might be a group out there, and you might only need a grant for, it might be some repairs, it might be something small. You can get grants for 200, 300, 400 euro. Like 200 euro to one group could be like 10,000 euro to another group, Ivan. And I think it's important that people know that these grants are there. And the great thing, like I said, about the 500,000 that was got for the community centre here, the great thing about grants is the money is there, and it's there for a reason. And if you apply for it, they want to give you the money. It's not a case that you're applying for the funds. Okay, it depends on how many people actually apply for them, how much is available. But the money is there, it's ring-fenced for it. So it's not like going to the bank for a loan and you're kind of hoping that you'll get it.
Absolutely, and I know the Tidy Towns group here in the town are very good at accessing local property tax funding, and I know they've gotten grants for various projects over the years, and are due to get some again. Again, I can't talk about this year's because we haven't adopted it yet, John, but I'm very hopeful that the groups in Castledermot will get their fair allocation. And as I said, it's our only opportunity during the year to try and put a few quid directly back in, or at least money that we have 100% say in. Do you know what I mean? A lot of the other funding, whether it's for roads, whether it's for different projects, you're going to various government departments. There's a plethora of representations and efforts you have to make to get it, but this is simply through your budgetary process every year, and it makes it a lot more easier. More people are becoming aware, and I suppose the fact that we're talking about it on Radio Castledermot means a lot more will. So inevitably it gets that little bit tighter, like any budget. But it is great to be able to fund the like of the Christmas lights, the like of some of the planters around the town that you see here. That all came from local property tax, directly funded. So yeah, hopefully we'll see a lot more of that in the future.
Yeah, no, absolutely brilliant. And what we'll do on our Facebook page and our socials is we'll put up the different websites that people can access, and we might also put up the contact details for our 5 councillors in the local municipal district. Is there anything else we haven't covered, Ivan, that we need to get through?
We said if we didn't run out of time, I don't know if we're out of time, but we possibly are, but if we didn't run out of time, I suppose it's important to mention some of the business support grants, and again, there is an energy assistance scheme. And again, Martin mentioned to me this evening that is showing a few problems, but as we know, I would imagine there are loads of local businesses in and around Castledermot that are really, really struggling with their energy bills. I talked to one local shop owner, whose monthly bill went from 1,000 to 4,000 euro in the space of a couple of months. Not all over a year ago, but almost a year ago at this stage. So that scheme is running up until the end of February and can be registered. You've probably done it for some people through your business as well, through Revenue Online.
Yep.
So it's the fact that Revenue are admitting it. I'd say it's making it a little bit scary. And I know Martin was saying 75%, I think, of the funding hasn't been looked for yet. So they're looking at rejigging that, because I suppose the important message from their point of view is that, you know, there's not going to be a cliff edge at the end of February or early March, and hopefully that will be extended and made a little bit more accessible. And also, just to finish then, again, for local businesses, we have the local enterprise centre in Kildare County Council, which is hugely helpful. They have been massively underestimated and undervalued, I'd say, throughout the course of the COVID pandemic, and they have administered millions and millions of euro. I don't have a sum on it. We were presented with a presentation during last summer about the amount of business support money that was put through our LEOs and administered by them. And again, they've over 20 staff there in Kildare County Council under the tutelage of Jackie McNabb, and they do a Trojan job, and I encourage any business to pick up the phone or email them if they're looking for particular supports, because they are very helpful and will be as helpful as they can be.
That's brilliant, Ivan. And yeah, on the business energy one, it isn't the easiest thing to apply for, and I think once revenue, like you say, once revenue got involved, it did make it a little bit more cumbersome, and it isn't very user friendly just for a normal person to actually go in and do it. So if you have a business out there and you want to apply for it and you haven't already done so, I would definitely advise you to pick up the phone to your accountant and send over your energy bills to them, both from 2021 up to early 22, and then current ones from September 22 to date. But definitely there's great money to be got from that. So Ivan, thanks a million for coming in. You definitely covered a lot of ground and a lot of grants there, and I know it was a lot for people to take in. I know there was some more comments put up there in relation to the parking. It is something that all the councillors are on top of. We know it's a problem. It's a problem at the playground. It is also a problem down around the primary school there at school going times and collecting times. I know when I was involved in the primary school down there, we used to do parking down there and traffic management. So when you have some more information on that, you might come back to me and I'll pass it on to the listeners.
Yeah, that'd be great, John. It was great to see. I think there was a bit of stimulus package money spent in 2021 as well down at the school with the pedestrian crossing, the traffic cam, and there was a new surface put on footpaths. I think that has helped a little bit. But again, I don't think you'll ever have enough parking around a national school.
Never.
For 10 to 9.
Yeah.
You want multi-storey, I think, in some cases.
Ivan has one more grant which he forgot to mention, and he's just going to tell us a little bit about it now. Ivan, over to you again.
Yeah, again, it's a grant that we put in place, a grant scheme, and it's only actually available in the Athy area, John. I had it in bold and letters here down in my book, and I don't know how I managed to skip over it, but it's a sport grant, I suppose, that will be available, that has been available for the last 4 years, that we put in place, and there's usually somewhere between kind of 50 and 60,000 there. And I suppose the important thing is there is usually money left over as well. And again, I have to preface this by saying we haven't adopted our budget, so there mightn't be a sports grant there this year if we don't get it through our budget meeting. But I don't know any other councillors that have a different view of it to me. So for grants for 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 euros, it can be for flags, it can be for nets, it can be for anything. It's a really, really good one, and as we mentioned earlier on, a lot more accessible than some of the national grants. So just check that out as soon as the Athy MND budget gets adopted, and maybe I'll drop you a note after that budget, because there's 2 or 3 other headline streams that are not on the Kildare County the website at the moment that hopefully will be there after our budget meeting, that will be applicable for older persons' alarms and lights and stuff like that.
Brilliant.
Again, we'll drop you a note in a couple of weeks.
Lovely.
On that.
That's great, Ivan, and I'll share that on with our listeners. And before we finish up as well, I have a note in here from our Vintage Club, and again the Castledermot St Patrick's Day Parade and Road Run is taking place again this year. And if any clubs or businesses would like to take part, they can get in contact with the Vintage Club and just let them know. The registration it starts at 12 o'clock if you want to take part in the road run, and that starts down on Hamilton Road. So you can start queuing up there from 12 o'clock on St Patrick's Day, and the parade itself will start at 2 o'clock. So and that's going to be followed by raffle, refreshments and music down in O'Neill. So an absolute great day, a great day for Castledermot on St Patrick's Day here. It's great to see so many people that will come out. So just remember it again, if you want to get involved, get in touch with the Vintage Club, and Catherine Horn down there will definitely look after you. I'd like to thank all my guests, Ivan and Lily, who joined me here this evening. I want to thank Tomas and John working away in the background here as normal. And of course, who's John? He's asking me here now. So the great and the one and only Fuzzy. And again, thanks to our sponsors, O'Gorman Meats, and again our condolences to the O'Gorman family on the sudden passing of Jim, and may Jim's soul rest in peace. So I'll be back here again in 2 weeks' time with another What Matters. So thanks a million for listening in.